let me start the class. Go back to Tlachihualiztli. Okay, let's go. Present. All right. Okay. All right. All right. Piali mo Juantin, naman ti mo machtiset lenika Tlachihualiztli. Hi everyone. Today we're going to learn about verbs, specifically intransitive verbs. So don't necessarily worry about what intransitive means yet, because it doesn't matter too much for this class. But next class, that the difference between transitive and intransitive verbs is going to matter. But this class, just know that we're basically just learning verbs. Okay, so in this class, you're going to learn 5 intransitive verbs, just 5, and you're going to learn how to use those verbs. And then at the last half of the class, we're going to learn how to give simple commands with those 5 verbs that you learned today. Okay, so let's start. Mati pehuacan. Okay. Inintlacatl motlaloa. Inintlacatl motlaloa. Inintlacatl motlaloa. Ininsihuatl nehnemi. Ininsihuatl nehnemi. Ininsihuatl nehnemi. Ininsihuatl huitoni. Ininsihuatl huitoni. Inintlacatl moquetza. Inintlacatl moquetza. Inintlacatl mosewia. Inintlacatl mosewia. Okay, so Inintlacatl motlaloa. Motlaloa. Ininsihuatl nehnemi. Ininsihuatl huitoni. Inintlacatl moquetza. One inintlacatl mosewia. Okay, so those are the 5 verbs that you need to know for this class. So now I'm going to ask you, Tlenkichiwa, what is he or she doing? Okay, Nahuatl doesn't have the gender, so when I say Tlenkichiwa, we're just saying what is he or she doing. The verb to do is chiwa. This key that we're using here, we're going to explain next week, so stay tuned. But for now, just know that this is saying what is he or she doing. Okay, so you can unmute yourself now, and I'm going to ask you, Tlenkichiwa. Tlenkichiwa inintlacatl.
Inintlacat motlaloa.
Wali. So inintlacat motlaloa. Here I decided to just say ya motlaloa. Okay, because if you remember, you can just say motlaloa, or you could add the ya if you want to. You don't have to. So ya motlaloa, and that ya, it can mean a man, it can mean a woman, it doesn't matter in Nahuatl. Okay, Tlenkichiwa ininsihuatl.
Ininsihuatl nehnemi.
Wali.
Ininsihuatl nehnemi.
Ininsihuatl nehnemi. Or to save time, I wrote ya nehnemi. But yes, ininsihuatl nehnemi is a perfectly complete sentence, which is awesome. I'm glad to hear you all being able to speak complete sentences. Wali, that's the goal. Okay. Tlenkichiwa ininsihuatl.
Ininsihuatl huitoni.
Wali. Ininsihuatl huitoni. Ya huitoni. Wali. Tlenkichiwa inintlacatl.
Inintlacatl moquetza.
Wali. Inintlacatl moquetza. Ya moquetza. Tlenkichiwa inintlacatl.
Inintlacatl mosewia.
Wali. Inintlacatl mosewia. I want to point out that this verb ends in IA, And notice that the loudest sound is this I, because the second to the last syllable in Nahuatl is always the loudest. So here it's mosewia, mosewia, okay? And also remember, like the verb motlaloa, it ends in OA. So right here we have motlaloa. This OA, the O is the loudest. So it's not motlaloa, it's motlaloa, okay? Motlaloa. So inin tlacat motlaloa, inin siwat nehnemi, inin siwat witoni,
Huitoni.
inin tlacat moquetza, one inin tlacat mosewia. Vale. So now I'm going to ask you with reference to I, right? So if I say tlen nik chiwa, notice I'm talking about I now because I have ni, right? And if you remember from many of the lessons we've already done, ni is referring to I. I'm the one doing the action. So if I say tlen nik chiwa, I'm saying, what am I doing? Okay. So tlen nik chiwa. So I have this picture of na and tlen nik chiwa. What do you think that I'm doing?
Na ni
Huitoni.
witoni.
Okay, so I heard some people say Nahuatl. Remember, the ni is always necessary. So you would actually respond with Nihuitoni. Tlenichiwa, Nihuitoni. You could also say na if you wanted to, but the ni has to be there. So you have to say na nihuitoni or just nihuitoni. I like nihuitoni because it's faster, but you could also say na nihuitoni to create emphasis. Wali, tlen tichchiwa, tlen tichchiwa. Okay, tlen tichchiwa,
Tihuitoni.
tihuitoni. So notice it's just the T, right? Tihuitoni. Wali, or tatihuitoni if you want to. Okay, tlen kichiwa, tlen kichiwa ya. Okay, so notice the pattern. Notice that there is no prefix in front. So if you're noticing the pattern, you're noticing that we're adding the exact same prefixes that we've been adding in front of nouns. Okay, so just like in nouns, we don't add a prefix when we're talking about he or she does something or he or she is something. We just leave it blank. We just say the word. So the same thing with verbs. In Nahuatl, you just say huitoni, and that means he or she is jumping or jumps. You could also say ya huitoni if you want to. Okay, so if we're talking about we, tohuantin, tlen tichchiwa. So now we have this T, right? And we have an H at the end. The verb chiwa is there to mean to do, but when we're talking about we, it's T and chiwa with an H. Okay, tlen tichchiwa, tihuitoni. Okay, so T, huitoni, okay, and an H. So when you pronounce this, you may or may not hear it, but it is subtle and it is tihuitoni. Ni, tihuitoni. It's very subtle, but it's there, okay? In some varieties, like I've been listening to a lot of Nahuatl speakers from other varieties, in some varieties they add an N there. So they might say tihuitonin. So just be aware, Nahuatl is very flexible, but I'm just teaching you our way, the way from Chicontepec, Veracruz. But there's many varieties of how to say this way, but don't worry, they'll still understand you. So we would say tihuitoni with an H. Or if you wanted to make it the long way, you would say tohuantin, tihuitoni. Tohuantin, tihuitoni. Okay, wali. Tlen inkichiwa. Okay, so I'm talking to a group of people in front of me. These are our friends, the Imohuantin from back lectures ago, if you remember them. So if I were to ask them, tlen inkichiwa, then I would say that they are in huitoni. In, they, or ustedes, I guess would be in Spanish, or y'all, in huitoni with an H. Notice there's an H there too. So I would say imohuantin in huitoni. Imohuantin in huitoni. So y'all are doing this action. Imohuantin in huitoni. Wali? And if it was a group of they over there, I was pointing at them or just talking about somebody over there, they, I would ask tlen kichiwa, with an H, and I would say huitoni, huitoni. So notice there is no prefix in front here either, but there's an H at the end, and that's how we know that it's more than one person. So huitoni, they are jumping, okay? So inihuantin, huitoni, they are jumping. Cuali. Okay, so we're gonna go over the 6 forms just to repeat them, but I'm pretty sure by now, since we've been doing ni, ti, and zero multiple times, hopefully by now this is like seeping into your head. Thankfully, Nahuatl is very regular, and so it is very consistent. So you'll notice that the prefixes are exactly the same from what we've been learning. And so essentially this is just really a review, okay? So you start with nihuitoni, nihuitoni, tihuitoni, tatihuitoni, yahuitoni, yahuitoni, tojuantin, tojuantin, tihuitoni, tojuantin, tihuitoni, inmojuantin, inhuitoni, inmojuanti, inhuitoni, and inijuantin, huitoni, inijuantin, huitoni. Okay, so the 6 forms, notice the prefixes are exactly the same. So I just rewrote it here just to have a complete list without the visual so that you can see that the translation is what you thought it was. Hopefully you figured it out. I'm pretty sure you did. So prefixes are exactly the same. So remember in the previous classes when we're saying I am a person, I am a teacher, we were just putting these prefixes. Well, those prefixes are exactly the same. So in Nahuatl, that ni, that ti, and the zero, they're indicating who is doing the action or who the sentence is about. So basically, those are the six prefixes that if you don't learn anything, you should learn these because these are the most important. You use them all the time for every verb. Okay, so you need to memorize these. If you haven't memorized it yet from the 7 classes that we already had, well, this is your time. You need to memorize it. Okay, so ni huitoni, I jump, ti huitoni, you jump, huitoni, he or she jumps. I just put the 0 here just to indicate that there is no prefix. And okay, so I want to point out that just like in Spanish, when you say yo brinco, in Spanish, it means I jump, but it also means in Spanish, it means I am jumping. So Nahuatl does the same thing. If you say I jump, which is nihuitoni, you are also saying I am jumping. It means both things. So you could be talking about I jump in general, or let's say I'm actually jumping right now, I could say nihuitoni. So it means I jump and I am jumping, and it applies to all 6 of these forms. Okay? Just like in Spanish, yo brinco means I jump and yo brinco means I am jumping. Now, Nahuatl, just like Spanish, also has a slightly different form to say I am jumping like right now by adding the suffix tica, but later on, it's a little bit more complicated how you add that suffix. So later on, you'll learn how to add tica. But for now, if you don't know how to say I am jumping right now, you just say it like I jump. It's the same thing in Nahuatl. Okay, so I wanted to point out, just like I've been pointing out, that notice that you jump is tihuitoni and we jump is tihuitoni. So we use the exact same prefix, the ti. But the thing that distinguishes it when you're adding it to a verb is this H at the end. So this H at the end is very important. You must write it in because it changes the meaning. With the H, it means we jump. Without the H, it means you jump. So that H does matter. So be aware of that. Also, same thing with the he jumps, she jumps versus they jump. Notice when you say he jumps, she jumps, you would say huitoni with no prefix. And same thing with huitoni, they jump. The only thing that's different is that H. So that H matters. You need to put it there. Okay? So now I'm going to ask you, tlen nichchiwa. Tlen nichchiwa. Okay? So you can unmute yourself now and see if you can answer these questions. Tlen nikchiua? Tlen nikchiua?
Motlaloa.
Motlaloa.
Kuali. Nimotlaloa. Kuali. Tlen nikchiua?
Ninehnemi.
Kuali. Ninehnemi. Tlen nikchiua?
Niwitoni.
Kuali. Niwitoni. Tlen nikchiua?
Nimoketza.
Nimoketza. Kuali. Tlen nikchiua?
Nimosewia.
Nimosewia. Kuali. All right. So now I'm going to ask you tlen tihchiua. Tlen tihchiua. Ta tlen tihchiua. Okay? Oh, actually, sorry. Not ta, tohuantin. It's actually tohuantin, right? Because it has this H. So, tohuantin, tlen tihchiua. Tohuantin, tlen tihchiua. So I gave you the answer, but whatever.
Timotlaloa.
Loa.
Kuali. Timotlaloa. Timotlaloa. And so that H is very subtle, but it's there. Okay? Timotlaloa. Timotlaloa. Kuali. Tlen tihchiua. Tlen tihchiua tohuantin.
Ninehnemi.
Ninehnemi.
Okay. So not ni because ni is I, right? So you gotta change the ni to something else.
Yeah. Tinehnemi.
Kuali. Tinehnemi. Tinehnemi. Kuali. Okay. Tlen tihchiua tohuantin. Tlen tihchiua.
Tojuantin.
Tiwitoni.
Tiwitoni.
Ajá. Tiwitoni. Not tinehnemi, but tiwitoni. Kuali. Tlen tihchiua tohuantin.
Tonhuantin Timoketza.
Kuali. Tohuantin timoketza. Kuali. Tlen tihchiua tohuantin.
Tohuantin Timosewia.
Kuali. Tohuantin timosewia. Kuali. All right, so these are the 6 forms of mosewia. So pretty straightforward. Hopefully by now you've memorized these prefixes, and yes, not much else to say. But now I'm going to give you a different example. Now I'm going to ask you tlen kichiwa chichi. Now at the beginning, I'm just going to ask myself the question, but later I'm going to ask you tlen kichiwa chichi, okay? So I hope that tlen kichiwa chichi is clear. Okay, so tlen kichiwa chichi, chichi moketza. Chichi moketza. Okay, kuali. Tlen kichiwa chichi, chichi mosewia. Chichi mosewia. Tlen kichiwa chichi, chichi nehnemi. Chichi nehnemi. Kuali. Tlen kichiwa chichi, chichi motlaloa. Chichi motlaloa. Juan tlen kichiwa chichi, chichi witoni. All right, kuali. Okay. Well, I guess I'm not gonna ask you. Just kidding. I didn't add that question, but I'm pretty sure you know what all of that meant, because all I did was add a chichi to it. But now what I want you to see is now I'm gonna say chichi, shikchiwa. Okay, and hopefully you can figure out what shikchiwa or the shi means in context. Okay, chichi, shimoketza. Okay, chichi, moketza. Chichi, shimosewi. Okay, chichi, mosewia. Chichi mosewia. Chichi, shinehnemi. Okay. Chichi nehnemi. Chichi, ximotlalo. Okay. Chichi, motlaloa. Okay. Chichi, xihuitoni. Chichi, huitoni. All right. Wally. So now I want you to give the dog the orders. So who wants to volunteer to direct the dog to do what you want it to do? And by the way, you could use this now when you have a dog and you want to teach them Nahuatl. Because I want to have a dog one day and teach them how to, I'm going to give them instructions in Nahuatl. That's what I'm going to do if I ever have one. But if you don't, you could practice with this digital version of a dog. And if you do have one, maybe you could use it. So who wants to volunteer? Say na. Say na.
Na.
Okay. So you're gonna tell Chichi to do things. So tell the dog to stand.
Chichi. She moketsa.
Wali. Wali. Shimoketsan. Tell the dog to sit.
Chichi. She. Oh, she. I forgot. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so moketsa, mosewia.
Mosewia. Chichi. She mosewia.
Okay. So okay. Oh, I didn't. Yeah. Okay, so I want to point something out.
Oh.
In Nahuatl, most of the time, the IA verbs and the OA verbs, a lot of the times in most of the tenses, you're going to drop the A. So in the command, which is here we're giving commands, when you give a command, those verbs that are shimosewia, the ia, the A, you're going to drop it and it's going to become shimosewi. So notice when you say mosewia, the I is the loudest, right? Because that's second to the last. But when you drop the A, now the second to the last syllable is the se. So now you're not going to say shimosewia, you're going to say shimosewi. So the se is the loudest one now. So you tell the dog shimosewi. That's how you tell them to sit. Shimosewi. Okay? And and chichi mosewia. Quali. Okay? Tell the dog to walk.
Chichi. She neknemi.
Quali. Chinehnemi. Quali. Chichi nehnemi. Quali. All right. Tell the dog to run.
Chichi. She motlalo.
Quali. So you did drop the A. Quali. So normally the verb is motlaloa, right? But when you give a command, you drop the A and it becomes shimotlalo. Shimotlalo. Quali. Chichi motlaloa. Chichi motlaloa. Quali. Tell the dog to jump.
Chichi. She witoni.
Quali. Chichi shiwitoni. Chichi witoni. Quali. Okay. So if you notice, on the left side I have the verbs in their regular form, and on the right side I have the form of giving that verb as a command. So now what is very it's pretty fairly easy how to create these, except that you need to remember that those so most of the verbs all you do is add the she to them at the beginning, but for the commands, for the verbs that end in OA and IA, you're gonna drop the A. So motlaloa becomes shimotlalo, nehnemi stays nehnemi and it's shinehnemi, moketza stays moketza and it's shimoketza, mosewia ends in IA, so you're gonna drop the A and it becomes shimosewi, and witoni stays shiwitoni or becomes shiwitoni. So that's how you create commands when you're giving commands to just one person or one dog or one, I guess it would be one animal or a person when you give commands. A lot of people here like to ask me if there's a way to say please in Nahuatl. There actually is not a way to say please in Nahuatl. It's not in Nahuatl, it's not rude to just give the command. So you could just say Shinehnemi and it's not technically rude. Now, in our variety of Chicontepec Nahuatl, you can add a particle on, a prefix on in front of it, and it makes it a little bit nicer, but it doesn't necessarily mean please, it just makes it a little bit nicer. So you could say shinehnemi, or you could say shion nehnemi. The on makes it a little nicer. Shion nehnemi. However, just know that in some varieties of Nahuatl, that on doesn't necessarily mean nicer, so just letting you know, it's a Chicontepec thing. So in general, in Nahuatl, the word for please doesn't actually exist. In other varieties of Nahuatl, they add the tla in front of this. So they might say tla shinehnemi. And the tla is, I guess, the closest that you can get to please. But really, that word tla doesn't really mean please. It just means if you would do this. Tlan, T-L-A-N is if in Nahuatl, tlan. So tla is like the nice way to say, like, if you would do this. Tlan, shinehnemi. So it's kind of like this is a nicer way to say it. But in our variety, we would just add on in front of it. So this could be shion motlalo, shion nehnemi, shion moketza, shion mosewi, shion witoni. Just know that you could put that prefix in there. It's the nicer way to do it in Chicotepec Nahuatl, but it doesn't necessarily apply to all varieties, but just be aware. Okay, so, but is there a word for please in Nahuatl? No. Okay, so those verbs that I pointed out that end in OA and in IA, right now you don't know this, but you will know this eventually. Those verbs are called class 3 verbs. Those verbs that end in IA and OA, those class 3 verbs, you're gonna drop the A whenever you're making commands. And you'll notice later in probably course number 2, you're gonna notice that these class 3 verbs tend to drop the A in every other tense except the present tense. Okay, so now we're gonna have not just one dog, but we're gonna have 2 dogs and we're gonna give them commands. So you're gonna watch me give them commands, okay? So I'm gonna say chichime, shikchihuacan, okay? So chichime, shimoquetzacan, chichime, shimoquetzacan, okay? So notice what's different here. Chichime, moquetza. Chichime, moquetza. Okay. Chichime, shimosewican. Chichime, shimosewican. Okay. Chichime, mosewia. Chichime, mosewia. Chichime, shinehnemican. Chichime, shinehnemican. Okay. Chichime, nehnemi. Chichime, nehnemi. Okay. Chichime, shimotlalocan. Chichime, shimotlalocan. Okay. Chichime, motlaloa. Chichime, motlaloa. Okay, and last one, chichime, shihuitonican. Chichime, shihuitonican. Okay. Chichime, huitoni. Chichime, huitoni. Quali? So now who wants to volunteer to give 2 dogs a command? Not just 1 dog. Did you notice what's different? The only thing that's different is you just add the can, the can, and that makes it a plural command. So meaning now what makes a distinction if you're giving a command to 1 person or 1 animal, I guess, or 2 people or more. You need to add the can if you're talking to more than 1 person when you're giving a command. Okay? So who wants to volunteer? Unmute yourself and say nah. Now you're gonna give 2 dogs a command.
No, yeah.
Okay, Edgar? Okay. All right, Edgar.
All right, I'm gonna try 1. That's it.
Okay. All right, let's go.
Uh,
So tell these dogs to stand up.
to stand up.
Mm-hmm. Tell them chichime, and then tell them to stand up.
Shimotlalotsa.
Okay. So there's two issues there.
I'm sorry.
Uh-huh.
Shimoketsa.
Uh-huh. Yes. So you got the verb right. Shimoketsa. And there's more than one dog. So if you just say
Right. So it has an
Shimoketsa, it's
H
only
on
one.
the end? It has an H?
No, that H applies to present. That H applies to present tense verbs, like they are
So it's-
standing. So you would say moketsa with an H. But if you're giving a command, you need to add something different at the end.
Shimoketsakan.
Wale. Uh-huh. Shimoketsakan. So notice, so let's pretend that there was only one dog and it would be Shimoketsa, right? When I say Shimoketsa, the ke is the loudest, right? Shimoketsa, because it's the second to the last. But here, once we add the kan, now the ke is not the second to the last any longer. Now the tsa is second to the last syllable. So it becomes Shimoketsakan. So now what, you're constantly changing the stress, but it's always second to last. So it's Shimoketsakan, Shimoketsakan. The tsa is the loudest one now. Shimoketsakan. All right, so say it again. Sampa chiquito, say it again.
Shimoketsakan.
Quali. Okay, now tell these dogs to sit down and be humble.
Okay.
Well, the be
sit
humble
down.
part is, you know, you probably don't have to say that. I don't either, I don't think.
Shimotse we.
Shimose we. You're missing something.
I know I'm supposed to put a plural there, but I think it's an H, isn't it?
No.
Or I don't, just take it out completely.
No, the H is there when it's plural, when you're stating the fact that they are sitting, or like here they're standing, right? So you would say, these dogs are standing. So you would say,
Shimotsewiya.
Shimosewi, no. So when you give a command to more than one person, you need to add a kan to the end. When you add an H to the end, it's when you're giving, when you're saying these dogs are sitting or these dogs are standing, you're stating the fact. But when you're giving a command, do this, like do this, you add kan to it. So now say it again.
Shimosewikan.
Riley. Okay, so in this case, this is the other case where we're saying, look, these dogs are standing, right? Chichime moketsa. But I was telling you to tell them to sit down, so I kind of messed up on the presentation part of it. So it's you should be saying shimosewikan, okay? And it's probably because I forgot what was next. Okay, so now chichime mosewia. So here I can point out the difference, right? So notice here we're saying the dogs are sitting. So we're stating the fact that the dogs are sitting. Whereas over here, when they were standing and we're telling them sit down, we're giving a command. We're saying do this. So that's when you need to add the kan. Okay, you need to add the kan when you're giving a command. Whereas when you're stating the fact that they're sitting, you're just adding the H. So it's what are you doing? Does that make sense? Okay, so now try it again. Tell these dogs to walk. Give them the command to walk.
Shinenemikan.
Wali. Shinenemikan. Wali. Shinenemikan. Okay, Wali. So now they're gonna do what you say because dogs like to follow the leader. So chichime nehnemi. Wali. Chichime nehnemi. All right, so this is, we're just stating that they are walking. Chichime nehnemi. Wali. So now tell these dogs to run.
Shitla lokan.
So you got it almost.
Shimotlalokan, sorry.
Yes, the mo. You got the mo.
Shimotlalokan.
Shimotlalokan. Shimotlalokan. Wali. So naman chichime motlaloa. So naman just means now. Naman chichime motlaloa. Now the dogs are running. Wali. Edgar, tell these dogs to jump.
Um, Shiwitoni, Shiwitonikan,
Wali.
Shiwitonikan,
Chiwitonikan.
Shiwitonikan.
When if you say Chiwitonikan, like you were saying, you're putting the emphasis on the O.
Right. Yeah.
But but it used to be the second to the last, but now this is the second to the last. So now it's Chiwitonikan. Wali. All right. So I'm stating the fact, Chichime Witoni. There you go. Chichime Witoni. All right, so the only difference here is the verbs on the left is just a verb, but when you give a command and it's more than one, you can add the she, and then you're gonna remove the a, like for these verbs that end in a, oa and ia, you're gonna remove the a and add the can. But in regular verbs that are not class 3, you're gonna just add the can. So it's she and can. Shinehnemikan, shimoketzakan, shiwitonikan, and then this one, shimosewikan, shimutlalokan. Okay, and then class 3 verbs drop the a when you make commands. Okay, this is the summary. These are the 5 verbs you learned. Motlaloa, nehnemi, moketza, mosewia, witoni. These are the prefixes that you learned today. These are exactly the same prefixes that you've been learning for like ever, basically. And notice that in this case, when these prefixes are in front of verbs, they're indicating who is doing the action. Whereas when we were doing it in front of, putting them in front of nouns, they were the same prefixes. But in that case, when you put them in front of nouns, it means I am this, you are this, he or she is this, we are this, etc. So putting this prefix, it depends where you put these prefixes in front of it, it changes the meaning. Okay? So like there is no word to be for to be in Nahuatl, but putting these prefixes is how you say to be. And also putting these prefixes in front of a verb says who is doing the action. Okay, so these are exactly the same. The only difference is at the end of the verb, when you're stating that somebody is doing one of these actions, you just add the H to the end when you're talking about more than one person. So for ti, for we, you want to say we are jumping or we are running, timotlaloa with an H. Y'all are jumping, imotlaloa with an H. They are jumping, motlaloa with an H. Okay? And when I didn't put a summary in here for commands, but basically she in front of a verb makes it a command, and can makes it more that you're giving that command to more than one person. Okay, so next week we're gonna finally cover transitive verbs, which is like a big part of Nahuatl. So next week we're gonna do that, and then the week after that I'm gonna do a whole class on only how to use the 3 different types of dictionaries that you could use, the ones that I recommend that are the most effective and that are Huasteca Nahuatl dictionaries. Okay, so now Tlazokamati Miak, if you want to support, here's the information, and I'm gonna leave it up to Tlachihualiztli, and I'm gonna stop sharing the screen so you could ask the questions. Okay, Tlachihualiztli. Let me see if there's questions on the chat. What's the name of the movie? Well, okay, this is probably referring to when we were talking about the movie. There are some Nahuatl movies on YouTube. If you just type in Nahuatl and like movie, you'll find Nahuatl movies. If you type in Nahuatl movie into YouTube, you'll find like there's a Guerrero version of the story of Jesus is on there. It's like a whole hour. There's a Guerrero version. There's also a Huasteca version. I understand both of those versions. And then there's even like other versions, Puebla, Nahuatl, etc. So you could easily find it. That's what we were referring to earlier. But just in general, if you just type in Nahuatl movies, or if you type in like Nahuatl songs or Nahuatl poems, you'll find a lot on YouTube. I mean, I found so many. So just know that Nahuatl is a very variable language. And so you might see Nahuatl in there that you're like, I don't understand or I don't recognize that Nahuatl. And I will tell you that when I started, I was like, this isn't Nahuatl, but it is Nahuatl. It's just that it's since the writing system isn't standardized, on some of those videos, they write it differently. And so they don't, They don't, the words, they separate them differently or add them differently or write them differently with different letters. And so it seems like it's not Nahuatl, but it is Nahuatl. Okay, so be aware of that when you're looking through videos and they'll say, oh my God, what's that? So just type in like, yeah, the Jesus film Nahuatl and you'll find a Huasteca version. And hopefully, yeah, hopefully y'all can enjoy it. You may or may not understand it. It took me a while. It took me like almost 2 years to finally, I pretty much understand it like 90% of it now. But when I started, I didn't know because they speak fast. Any other questions? Oh, I need to admit Zohar. Yes. Yeah, Jaira saying there's a lot of Nahuatl cartoons too. Yeah, you can even find Plaza Sésamo in Nahuatl. They use the central Nahuatl there, but I still understand it. So be aware. There's cartoons and there's even courses on there. You just have to search. And on my YouTube page, I have if you scroll down on my channel, I have a whole playlist that's called just Nahuatl, like Nahuatl, and I have links to a whole bunch of videos. So if you don't want to do the work, just go there and search, just click. I have songs. They have like La Llorona in Nahuatl. You can find like the Mexican independence song in Nahuatl, etc., etc. It's okay. Sohar says, sorry, I was late, but I went to watch a previous lesson. There is no time frame. As long as somebody shows up. If one person shows up to my class, that's fine. I just need one person to participate. So don't worry about being late. There is no time. You can come in as long as you don't interrupt. We're good. Any questions from the homework? Is anybody doing the homework? I know Adriana is doing the homework, which is amazing. But, and I also get random emails from people who are doing the homework, especially on YouTube. So I know people are doing it, but I want you to know you should be doing it if you want to get like more out of it, more out of this class. So you're not lost when I'm like, giving you some examples. And sometimes you may ask me questions that I know I covered in the homework. So if you're having those questions, maybe it's because you're not doing the homework. You should be doing it. Okay. If we email you or we take time after class to talk. Yeah. So right now, Zohar, we're in the question section of the class. So this is what this is for. This is for when people who have homework questions, this is your time to ask it. Yes, people do randomly email me, but I don't prefer that because you see, you're taking time off of my day. And since I have a half an hour scheduled for just questions, I prefer that you come and ask me them here, but I know that not everybody can make it to class. So if you email me, yes, I'll still answer. But just know when you're doing that, you're taking time out of my day, like when I'm at work, etc. So I'd rather not. I'd rather just do it here. But I will still answer you. But just know it might take me longer because I have other things. I crochet. I work in a pharmacy, and I teach other students. I do other things. And I just moved, if you can notice the craziness. It's not that crazy back here, but they're still fixing on my place. So since I just moved, things need to be fixed up. And so I'm busy. All right. Cool. Any other questions? Bialy? Last time they were asking me about greetings. If you're curious about greetings in Nahuatl, we will eventually have a class on greetings. Just know that they're not exactly the same as you would expect, like in Spanish or English. Sometimes you may hear people say like cualitonali, which is them literally translating from Spanish, which is buenos dias, or cualitiotlak or cualiyowali. Those are not traditional greetings in Nahuatl, but later on I'll give you what they are, what they actually use. But just know they're not traditional greetings. But do people sometimes use them? Yes, they do. I actually, on my Facebook page, I posted a link where there's a native Nahuatl speaker from Huasteca region and a native Nahuatl speaker from El Salvador. He speaks Nahuatl Pipil, and they compare their different varieties of Nahuatl and how they speak, and pretty much they're mutually understandable. And in one of those sections, they talk about how the greetings are not Kuali, Kuali, Totlak, etc., that they're actually something different. So if you want to hear from a native speaker, I guess if you follow me on Facebook, that's where it is. I can't put it on YouTube because it's a Facebook video. So I guess I could link to it. And I don't know if it's public or not, but I could probably link to it on my YouTube class. And so, and also, you may or may not know this, there's a lot of native speaker Nahuatl groups on Facebook that I'm part of. And so sometimes you might see that there's actual like conferences that are purely in Nahuatl. And so one day, once you're finally fluent, maybe you could join those groups and you can listen to them, and I listen to them, and it's freaking amazing to be able to like listen in and be like, I know what they're saying. I know what they're talking about. And so you can hear actual native speakers talk and how they talk to each other, and you'll notice that they talk to each other from different varieties. Like some of them are from Guerrero, some of them are from Puebla, some of them from Huasteca, and they talk the way that they talk, but you'll see that they still understand each other. It's not a problem. So therefore, whatever Nahuatl you're learning, just learn that Nahuatl, learn it well, and then you'll be able to communicate, and they will understand you. Don't worry. They may ask you like, hey, what is this random little word that you're using mean? But generally they understand you because they've come in contact with other types of Nahuatl. Even if they don't speak that way, they'll still understand you. Just like when you hear English from like Spain, or if you speak Spanish, you hear Spanish from like Cuba or Spanish from Puerto Rico, they use words that you don't use, but you know what they mean because you've come in contact with those speakers. So same thing with Nahuatl. Nahuatl has about 30 varieties. They pretty much can understand each other. And if you speak one way, they pretty much can figure it out. So don't worry about that. Okay. Can I give you some links to some of those groups? I mean, yeah, but this is the thing. Yeah, I could link you to them, but you're gonna have to request to be. When I upload this video, I will also put links to Facebook groups, and I'll put groups links to those videos and links to those Facebook groups. Just know that they're gonna ask you to request you to join, because they don't want just random people joining. So you may or may not be accepted. I don't know. I'm not a moderator. I don't take responsibility. But some of them are only for natives or people who could speak. So they only speak Nahuatl in those. So just be aware. Eventually you can join once you do understand. But if they post and you're like, what the hell? What it's saying? Well, obviously you haven't learned yet. So some of them are only for native speakers, or for speakers who understand Nahuatl. So yeah, you're gonna have to ask to join. Any other questions? Kena, amo. Okay, nope. Okay. Okay. Yep. Thank you very much. All right, Tlazokamati miak. This video should be up within like 30-40 minutes because I'm gonna upload it right now and I have a fast connection. So Tlazokamati miak, timotase chikwayiyok, and I hope that all of you are learning a lot. I'm putting a lot of my time in being extra creative with my lessons, and I hope that you see that and that you appreciate it. And one day, maybe Nahuatl is gonna be like, explosions, fireworks, celebration, confetti. We can make this continuous, what I'm saying. All right, timoitase.
Timoitase Tlazokamati.
Ashte.